Hey guys, I'm still working on my video about James Hicks, Maine's most infamous serial killer, but it's taken a little bit longer than I'd like. I've just finished writing the script, which is topped off at about 47 pages, and so I'm hoping to start recording it in the next day or two. But in the meantime, I thought it would be fun to do a little video about episodes of The X-Files that are based on real-life events. So grab yourself a snack, wrap yourself up in your favorite blanket, plop yourself on the couch, because today we are going back to October 11th, 1996 to talk about my favorite episode of The X-Files, Season 4, Episode 2, Home. Girl, you know I changed my shirt for this. Okay, so a little bit of catch up for people who maybe have never seen the episode, or maybe for those who haven't seen it in a while and have forgotten what it is. What this episode, Home, is about is the Peacock family who lives in this town called Home. And in the episode, they're portrayed as being very inbred. They can't speak really well. They can't read. They don't have any electricity. They grow their own garden. They raise their own meat. They homeschool their kids. You know, your typical inbred backwoods hillbilly family. Now, what a lot of people don't realize, and that no one realized when this episode was originally aired in '96, is that it takes a lot of inspiration from 3 real life events. And that's what we're going to talk about today. The main inspiration of the episode, like the meat and potatoes, is the Ward family, who's an actual family from Munnsville, New York. In particular, the 4 Ward brothers who were still remaining in the house on the property. Now, I'm not going to get into like the nitty-gritty particulars of the Ward family, but let me know down below if that's something that you want me to do when I'm done with the James Hicks one. The house and the property had been there and been in the family for like 200 years. The 4 brothers were William, Delbert, Roscoe, and Lyman. Now, what happened was one day William just didn't wake up. Now, William and Delbert shared a room. William was very ill. He had failing health. So what ultimately happened was Delbert was accused of smothering Wilbur, which then brought up the question, was this a mercy killing? In general, the family was left alone. They definitely had people that advocated for them and wanted to protect them and just thought that they should be left alone. Now, of course, in any situation, there are the Kens and the Karens, and those are the people that started spreading the rumors about the Ward family, that they were inbred and ignorant and like these monstrous hillbillies, none of which was actually true. What the writers and producers of the X-Files did was they took those rumors and visually portrayed them through the Peacock family. So the Peacock family is a representation of the Ward family if you saw them through the rumor's eyes. An example of a mercy killing on the episode is when we see that mother giving birth to the baby and then they immediately bring it outside and bury it. You can clearly see the father is heartbroken and distraught about the loss of his child, who we later learn is being buried alive because he wasn't going to live very long because of all his birth defects. In the eyes of the Peacock family, they were ending that infant's suffering out of love and compassion. This was, in a nutshell, the stance or the point of view of Delbert Ward in reference to his brother. Over the years, as the members of the Ward family died off, more and more of their land got seized, until eventually it was described at one point as being the size of or no bigger than a baseball field, which is what that opening scene of the X-Files is meant to represent, when you have that Sandlot style game going on and then they zoom out and you can see their dilapidated house in the background. that's a representation of society seizing their land and essentially trying to push them out. The second inspiration for the episode is kind of a silly, fun one, but it is the Andy Griffith Show. It's brought into the episode through the deputy and the sheriff, Barney and Andy, who happen to have not only the same names as Barney and Andy on the Andy Griffith Show, but also the same character dynamic and personalities. At one point in the episode, when Barney introduces himself to Mulder, Mulder can be heard under his breath saying Barney Fife, and that is a direct reference to Barney Fife. On the X-Files, Andy is depicted as being very cool, calm, level-headed. He's very inward. He definitely thinks about stuff before he reacts, and that's pretty true to Andy's character on the Andy Griffith Show. And Barney is a little more cautious. He's nervous. He, let's be careful. Let's think about this. Maybe kind of reacts quickly, more on emotion and less on logic. And this is also true to Barney on the Andy Griffith Show, but he's a little bit more of a knucklehead on that. The third major inspiration is taken from a little bit of a Charlie Chaplin book called My Autobiography. And what happened here was Charlie was staying at a tenant house, which I took to understand was sort of like a bed and breakfast. It was somebody's house and they have just a lot of extra space, so they rented rooms, but there was, for lack of phrasing, like a host family and like the people that took care of the house and, did the laundry and whatnot. And Charlie had become close enough with this host family that one day they came up to him and said, "Come with us. We want to show you something that we don't show many people." So, probably curious, he went with them up some stairs, down a hall, and into a room. In this room, there was three things. There was a light, a cot, and what looked to be a sack of something underneath the cot. So after everyone was all gathered in the room, some members of the family went and pulled out this sack, wheeled out this sack on a little cart that was underneath the cot. Except much to Charlie's horror and surprise, it was not a sack. It was a young man with no arms or legs. So after they wheel this young man out from under a bed, does that sound familiar? He stand him up and begin singing. When they begin singing, this limbless man begins to flop and flail around in this very sad attempt to dance. When their song's done and the dancing stops and the laughter subsides, the family just tip him back over onto his wheelie cart, roll him under the cot, look at Charlie and say, "Wasn't that great?" And that was the inspiration for the mother who was kept on the wheelie cart under the bed. The mother in real life is not true. There was no accident. They didn't take her home and mend her and then keep her under a bed. But a limbless person kept under a bed is very true. This brings us to our fourth real life inspiration that this show takes. And that is the very real fear that society has for things that they don't know a lot about and don't want to take the time to understand. This particular episode of the X-Files is sometimes lumped into a category that's called Monster of the Week. The Monster of the Week episodes is just a cluster of episodes that take a step back from the normal paranormal timeline of the X-Files. And given the way that the Ward family was portrayed through the actions of the Peacock family with their grotesque appearance and everything, it's easy to understand why it's classified as that. I'm forced to take a step back and ask myself, though, who's the real monster here? Is it the Ward family, the Peacock family, the isolated families who choose to keep to themselves, who grow their own food, raise their own meat, teach their own children? Is it the people who learn by candlelight and live with the season and don't mow their lawn? Or is it us, society, for harboring such fear and hatred towards things we don't know? For having such a willingness and ability to swallow literally anything alive that we don't want to take the time to understand? This episode of the X-Files is about general society's fear and ignorance about things they don't understand, and how they take their own fears that they made up and rationalize them in their head to then carry out their own violent actions. Woo! I think that's about going to wrap it up for today. I hope you guys enjoyed that, maybe even learned something about the episode that you didn't know before. But please join me next time for the next installment of episodes of the X-Files that are inspired by true events. But until then, be safe and be kind. Bye.